Stepbrother. Chapter 1. It was always a busy day in New York City. Vehicles are moving slowly, businessmen, tourists and regular people driving across Brooklyn Bridge passing the East River to reach the city. The bridge was full of cars lined up as usual. One of the drivers stuck in traffic saw the set of red lights from the back of other cars from there. He groaned when he saw that there was little movement from the lane he was in. And so the impatient driver of a black SUV quickly changes lane to make a turn onto the FDR Drive to get away from all the traffic. He was in a hurry to pick up a friend and cannot waste another minute waiting for cars to just move an inch every 5 minutes. Jaden, a black man just about his late 20s driving the SUV, hands his cell phone to Plugger Jones sitting on the passenger seat as he looks to his left to change lanes. "Man, call this kumquat and tell him we will pick him up and take him to get his kid from school. I just want to talk." Since he was the one driving the car, he had his friend, Plugger, call the person they are going to pick up about his kid. Plugger Jones, a younger black man in his 20s, reached for Jaden's phone before leaning back to his seat and looking outside the window to watch the brake lights lit up every time the car stops from the traffic. Then he turns to Jaden. "What's the code again?" he asked and held the phone with both his hands. Jaden rolled his eyes at his friend and changed the gear as he was getting out of traffic in a hurry. "The year I was born, man," he reminded Plugger. A hint of irritation in his voice was given. Plugger merely nods and types in the code to access it. Jaden's phone. "This nigga shorts you 240 grand and you just want to talk to him? That sounds unreal, man," he said as he shook his head in doubt. His eyes were locked on the phone screen before looking up at Jaden a bit. "Do I call him after we get out of this traffic or do I call him now?" Jaden, still looking straight the windshield, grinned when he saw the opportunity to finally get out of traffic. He did not flinch and speeds up to make it to the intersection right before the light turned red. There was no way he would waste another minute stuck there when there was another way out of it. "Just call him. It's almost 3 p.m. I don't want him to be late picking up his kid," he answered now that he got his focus back to Plugger. Plugger backfired from the sudden speed and almost dropped the phone. Jaden saw in his peripheral vision that Plugger was catching the phone from his left then his right hand as it slipped. In the end, Plugger caught it with both his hands and leaned back to his seat now that he recovered from the sudden recoil. "You know, you are one cold son of a gun," Plugger says now that he got his composure back. Taking back what he said as he straps the seatbelt from his shoulder to his waist, securing himself to another possible beating the red light. "Better safe than never. Don't you dare talk of my mother like that. If you want to stay breathing you better learn to hold your tongue and keep your mouth shut." Jaden retorts and shifted his gear to be able to make a sharp right turn and successfully cutting off the cars in front of him, getting himself a lot of honks from behind. Jaden paid no mind to the honks of complaint from the other drivers. What he wanted right now was a fast travel to get to his target location. Plugger looked back to check on the cars that Jaden cut into, hoping that no one would road rage on him for that. Jaden saw that Plugger still hadn't followed his instruction, so he cleared his throat to get Plugger's attention. "Make the call, unless you got my 240 grand. He says, still expressionless even after that he broke a couple of rules in driving already, even almost causing an accident for that sharp turn he just did. Plugger, with his legs stiff of what might have been the end of his life, is holding tightly from the seatbelt strap on his chest. "Dang nigga, that was just an expression. You didn't have to threaten my life. I'm calling him right now," Plugger says when Jaden's driving was not anywhere bringing him to a near life and death experience. His hands were still shaking when he started hitting on the numbers on the cell phone to call on their friend. Jaden, looking at his watch, saw that he was already late. He does not like it when others are late, and that applies to himself. He shifted the gear again and pressed on the gas pedal hard to increase their speed. Plugger kept one hand holding onto the ceiling car grab handle to keep himself balanced. Looks like having a seatbelt was not enough. While his other hand was holding on the phone that was close to his ear as the number rang. The impatient driver effectively dodged the traffic by breaking the rules here and there. The black SUV kept on changing lanes, left-right, right-left, until eventually they had gotten out of the traffic. After a long and exhausting drive from all the maneuvers and quick gear shifting for the sake of finding a fast route to their target location, Jaden parks the SUV in front of a Harlem brownstone. The engine left running, he locks in the handbrake and quickly gets out of the driver's seat into the back seat, closing the rear door as soon as he got in. Right after Jaden got out, Plugger made a passing transfer from the passenger's seat to the driver's seat, closing the front door of the SUV. Plugger watched Jaden and leaned on the wheel, mumbling to himself how Jaden was so impatient and being such a cold and heartless jerk. Mel, a young black man in his mid-20s, well dressed in a blue polo and wearing a horn-rimmed glasses, walks out of the entrance of Harlem brownstone. He saw the SUV on his exit, so he locks the front door and ran towards the SUV to get in. Holding the car handle, he looks left and right before he opened the door and sat in the passenger's seat. Immediately when he got in, the SUV pulls off from the curb, mingling with the traffic quickly. There was silence as they drove to the school to pick up Mel's kid. Jaden sits in the back seat with his head looking down, typing a text on his phone. "I know I got you waiting for too long. When it's right for me to do this job for you, I will call. The 20 makes it worth it. You don't have to ask my brother about a time either. I will be running the family soon if we do this right, just relax. The mink you sent my girl didn't help the process, lol, I gotta be subtle. This is a 3-year disappearance. Sorry for the delays, my German brother." Plugger Jones makes several attempts to park the SUV in a parking space enclosed by a car and the pavement. Mel looks intensely at Jaden and then to the school building behind the SUV, and then back at Jaden, who has been quiet since his arrival. Mel saw that Jaden was texting and decided not to disturb him. When Jaden finishes his text and presses the send tab on his cell phone, he will be looking up to see Mel smiling at him. Jaden, however, looks at him sharply as he wraps the power cord wire on his left hand and puts his hands on his lap. "I just want to say that I appreciate you for hitching me to pick up my kid, especially since I know your old lady just left you with your newborn son and you get sensitive and all that crap. But I guess you're all business now." Mel tried to break the silence by igniting a conversation of their previous bond. "You don't have to remind me how far we go back, my nigga. Let's go straight to the point of why you're here. Where's my 240 grand? Jaden replied, ignoring everything Mel just said. The SUV finally comes to a stop, parked right across the street of Polo Grounds School, where little children begin to file out of the school's front door. Mel, rubbing the back of his head, looks at Jaden, takes a deep breath and puts his hands over his heart, showing what it really meant for him. He leans the left side of his head on the headrest. "Thanks for bringing me to pick up my kid. You know my car is wrecked, but you know Simone is always happy to see his uncle Jaden. We are like brothers, you know." Putting back his hands on his lap. Even if Mel was trying to appease him by bringing up the past, Jaden did not even bat an eye or show any emotional attachment of the memory of the past. "You know you are short 240 grand, right?" Totally not caring a single word that Mel was saying. When Mel noticed that Jaden was not up for a little chit-chat, he sighed. "I know, man, I will have it by Monday. I've been late 2 days before, but never this much. I swear on our mamas and nanas." He says, and observed how Jaden was going to react, maybe even be more accepting and less hostile. But no, Jaden's expression did not change. In fact, Jaden was a bit irritated with what Mel had said. "You're late and you bring up Nana? Nana nigga." This ringed on Jaden's ear, and before Mel could say another word to explain himself, suddenly Jaden reaches both his hands over the headrest, wrapping Mel's neck with the power cord he previously prepared. Both of Mel's eyes widened at the sudden act. He was caught off guard by this sudden movement. Plugger saw what he was doing but did not say a word. He knew better than to act or say anything when Jaden was serious and not in the mood. He focused his eyes elsewhere. Anywhere but Jaden or Mel. As Mel was choking, Jaden reaches over to his ears and said, you also opened your fat mouth about our way out. 20 million should have been enough to keep your mouth shut. So now I'll permanently shut them for you. He threatened Mel, who was speechless at the very moment. Jaden wanted to tell him that he was serious about the money. Their past is not going to make him hold back to get what he wants. There is just no way. When Plugger Jones noticed that Jaden was not going to stand down and Mel wanted no more of what was going on, Plugger Jones took action this time. He was worried that things will escalate to a much worse scenario than what he is seeing at present. Mel tried to move his hands towards his neck, wanting to get the power cord off of his neck and take a breather. Jaden was not loosening his grip either. He was a stubborn one for sure. It was a good thing that Plugger Jones chose to intervene and take action. He held Jaden's hands down. He does not say a word, but he wanted to hint through his eyes that he wants Jaden to stop. Jaden saw the look that Plugger Jones was giving, and he scoffed when he understood what he wanted. But Jaden did not hold back. He pulls the power cord more tightly this time, not caring of the consequences of his actions. He knows that as long as Mel was struggling, he was still alive. There was no way he was going to let him go. He kept the power cord tightly wrapped around Mel's fragile neck until finally, Mel had stopped breathing. Jaden heard that the struggling had stopped and that the body was no longer moving. Mel's body was leaning lifeless on his seat, his neck hanging because of the power cord still around him. This time, Jaden let loose of the power cord. Mel's body slumps now down the passenger seat. There was no more proof of life in his body. Jaden felt nothing as he watched the lifeless body go down. He asked for it. He was merely doing what he thinks is best. Then he looked over at Plugger Jones, who gazed back at his nonchalant expression. "Push the body out," Jaden blankly says as he fixes his jacket and composes himself as if nothing had happened. He keeps the power cord and crosses his arms while Plugger Jones raised a brow on him, as if it was a ridiculous thing to do. "Out here? Are you crazy? The school is across us, you know, playboy," Plugger Jones says, just in case Jaden did not think this through. It was a public location. There is a lot of people that can see and witness them drop the body, not to mention, it was broad daylight. It would be too risky to just drop a body there. Plugger Jones looked around, just in case there was also any surveillance cameras in the area that would film them drop the body in front of the school. It was a public place after all. However, Jaden did not even flinch or is affected by this. He felt nothing after taking a life. Jaden saw the look in Plugger Jones' face again. This time around, Jaden shoots him a deadly glare, not wanting to repeat his orders, but it would seem that he needed to make it clear that he meant what he said and that he does not want to repeat himself again. "You heard me," he said with a little more emphasis than before. His eyes locked on with Plugger Jones' eyes to deliver the seriousness of his message. "Either you push him out or you can be put out with him." He threatened to add more input into his order. "Geez man. Okay, look nigga, I didn't say a word about Nana, he did," Plugger Jones says, raising both of his hands in surrender. He was not planning to or going to disobey his orders. He was just actually concerned of the possibility of them being caught red-handed because of this. He shakes his head and hurried to reach for Mel's lifeless body to follow instructions. "You a cold nigga, don't come at me. I love Nana too and I ain't saying crap about her. Frack, I'm making you drive when we get to the turnpikes. I loved Nana and you can't tell me not to say that." Plugger Jones panics as he quickly opens the passenger side door and pushes Mel's body out the door. Both Plugger Jones and Jaden watched as the body fell out of the car. Mel's head was the one who landed first, hitting the pavement. They heard a crack as he fell. The side of his head that fell earned a cut from the cemented pavement and blood had dripped from the open cut. Plugger Jones shook his head at how the body looked like from the fall. He clicked his tongue and looked away. Then he pulls the side door close and starts the SUV again. It was the perfect time to leave and escape. He backs up the car and then out of the parking space. Accelerating his gear, they speed away onto the highway entrance safely. Jaden did not look back, his eyes were staring right in front of them with no fear or regret. There was no expression seen in his face. Plugger Jones had more expression than he does. He also did not dare to look back. There was no looking back now. He focused his eyes on the road so he does not have to be distracted with what they had left behind. Jaden also did not say a word or anything, and so Plugger Jones also chose silence at this point. What they did, leaving Mel's lifeless body lying down the cold pavement right in front of a school and in public, was cruel. Chapter 2. A hand hangs coming from the driver's side window of a black SUV, the cigarette ashes fall on the ground, the smoke lifts up to the bright blue sky. The car engine was revving, humming quietly as it was parked in the middle of the street. The impatient driver of the black SUV was waiting for the traffic light to turn green. It was quiet around him. While waiting, he turned to his left to see that a white sedan had a lady driver inside. She was busy doing her makeup while waiting for the stoplight to give them the go signal to the other side of the intersection. He scoffed and turned to his right to check what kind of person was driving the red car. He watched as the male driver, wearing a business suit and expensive business attire to be exact, had an earpiece on so he can talk on the phone without breaking any driving rules and risk being stopped in the middle of the road by patrols. Jaden observed the little girl sitting at the passenger seat. She was holding on her tablet, staring intently at it even. When the little girl looks up and sees that Jaden was looking at her, Jaden simply tilts his head at her and gesturing a two-fingered salute to get her attention. The little girl just raised a brow on him and looked back to her tablet to give her focus there. Jaden scoffed at the little brat and chuckled to himself. This was his way of amusing himself while waiting for the red light to turn green after all. He was later deep in thought when he was disrupted by the sudden ringing of his loud ringtone that reverberated in his car. Jaden had a bored look in his eyes as he simply glanced on the phone placed in the phone holder by the aircon. He did not feel like answering the call and he glanced back at the red light, mentally counting down the remaining seconds before he can hit the pedal and go. The light hit green and he drove onwards. He was not driving fast this time, he was just at an average phase as he went on. His eyes were locked on the road, but he was very keen on what he can see in his peripheral vision. And most of all, he was purposely ignoring the call he was receiving, letting the ringtone play. He showed no urgency to answer the call and simply ignored it. He reached his hand towards the radio to change the station as he inhaled his cigarette. He turned the knob, trying to find the kind of music that was his jam. He tapped on his cigarette to allow the ashes to fall outside. When he finally found the kind of music that he wanted to vibe to, he rested his back on his seat and focused on the road. The wait will not be long now. He just needed to be a bit more patient. He saw in his peripheral vision that a street vendor was by the wayside and he was holding up bouquets of flower and handing it over to a customer. He saw that it was not a classy flower shop, but its bouquet collections vary from strong bright yellow daffodils to spicy fragrant pink carnations to prickling colored roses. His attention was caught by these lovely collection of flowers, and so he slows down the car and he shifts the gear so he can change lanes and go closer to the side and be near the street vendor to have a closer look at the flowers. Jaden then looked at the flowers through the car window and saw that it was good. Better than what he sees from earlier. He now rolled open his window to smell the delicate scent of flowers. It went past the scent of his cigarette. The flowers were of good quality indeed. He was not going to let this opportunity slip out of his hands. There were good flowers right in front of him and he does not have to pay extra expensive for its good quality. He calls the attention of the street vendor. The street vendor did not notice him and so he whistled. When the street vendor turned around, Jaden saw him smile. Happy to see another customer stop by his little corner. The street vendor walks up to him to see what he wanted. Jaden kept his poker-faced expression up despite the friendly vibe that street vendor was giving him. How much for the roses? Jaden asks for a bouquet of fresh red roses to go. He pointed at the set of roses by the stand. It was very lovely being displayed there on plain sight. They are fresh roses, ain't it? he added a follow-up just in case. Maybe the appearance of the roses were fooling him. The street vendor smiled at him and gave him a discounted price for the bouquet of fresh red roses. The street vendor quickly picks his best roses for the latter and carefully wraps them up in a yellow wax paper. While the street vendor was wrapping up his order of fresh red roses, Jaden rolled the window back up to give himself some privacy while he was preparing his cash that he will be giving and paying to the kind man. He pulled out a couple of bucks from his brown leather wallet. He was folded it and was ready to pay the man, but he decided to give the man a tip. Perhaps $1 or $2, just for making his day okay than the previous ones. When Jaden sees that the street vendor was now approaching him with his ordered bouquet of fresh red roses, he let out a small smile as he rolled back open the car window and exchanges the money for the bouquet. The street vendor saw the folded cash was more than the amount that he said earlier. He gave Jaden a rather surprised look before smiling widely and giving him his gratitude for the extra cash. Jaden said nothing else as he rolled the window back up and carefully placed the bouquet of fresh red roses beside him on the passenger seat. He looked at it with a warm expression, his eyes locked on the detailed shape of the rose, the freshness that made it more beautiful than an average rose. With that, he faced forward and drove on. He arrives back to his destination and parks the car with ease. He was calm and quiet. The caller earlier did not seem to bother him again for another call, and he in turn did not bother to give that person a call back either. Entering inside a building garage, the roll-up door automatically slides upward for him to go through. He drives in and parks the car. He turned the engine off after he finally had parked. He looked back at the fresh red roses that he bought. He felt really satisfied at the sight of it. The noise and rants are overlapping, you can barely understand a word inside the prison jail. There are constant chatters there, prisoner talking to another prisoner. Guards and patrol officers walking back and forth. The sound of the bell ringing 3 times a single day. It was already normal to the prisoners' everyday lives to hear the everyday chatters. Prisoners raging about their turn going out in the field, cursing the prison guards, and picking a fight with their fellow inmates. The rage was not the average kind where people petition and rally up with signboards and cardboards or standing outside of a building and shouting and yelling to the government officials for justice. No, this was not like that. The kind of raging that the inmates would do is to literally commit violence. There was no respect to who was hurt or who fell victim to their rage. Inmates do not hesitate to hurt their fellow inmates and most of all will not hesitate to harm any of the guards and patrols if they have the opportunity to. Most of the time, because they were rallying up and fighting against the guards, they end up receiving a lockdown and often would even skip a meal in the morning because of it. It was the consequence of their actions. Noel has been one of the prisoners that used to be among them. Now he is being escorted by 2 guards, one on his right and the other on his left. He was coming out of his jail cell door and he does not turn to look at his fellow inmates that were shouting at him as he passes through their cells. It felt as if he was walking really slow, but no, he was just walking at the right pace. His fellow inmates were talking to him, telling him something, perhaps even cussing him as he was walking. The guards were already used to this kind of deed from these uneducated criminals. It happens every single time that they escort someone like this. That is why, Noel makes sure that he does not let them get to him. It was not like he is going to leave anything important behind. Right now, what he should be focusing on is the future that awaits him. He looks straight ahead, keeping the noises around him away from his mind. Everything was inaudible now that he chose not to listen to his fellow inmates trying to discourage and bring them down with their useless teasing and harmless mockery. Noel was very much full of confidence on his way out. He goes inside the changing room to surrender his orange prison clothes and dresses up in his usual street baggy clothes. This was it, this was the freedom that he has been waiting for. This is what he has been deprived of since he was brought to prison. He was deprived of freedom. He felt comfortable to finally be able to wear his usual clothes that he liked wearing, it almost felt like home already. This was very reassuring that whatever was happening was real. His confidence did not waver and instead strengthens all the more now that he is very close to leaving that place forever. Once he was finished getting dressed and surrendering his orange prison clothing, he was continued to be accompanied by 2 guards as he goes to collect his stuff in the release desk. Noel had a good look at the things he had prior to his arrest. Brings back memories of what he had lost when he was brought to the 4 corners of this prison. His movements were slow and composed. The guards does not even pressure him despite his sluggish movements. He was relishing every single second of his freedom after all. Noel finally had all of his things back and he allowed himself to be escorted by the same guards until the prison gate exit. This was it, this was the last step of his proven freedom coming his way. As he walked towards the gate exit, he takes a deep breath to inhale the air of freedom outside of the 4 corners of the prison walls. There was a difference between the scent of freedom and the scent that he can inhale from inside the penitentiary. There was this strong stench that makes the inmates feel miserable in their first couple of weeks inside the hole. It was terrible. And even if they finally have their turn to make it in the field to spend some time under the sun, the 4 concrete walls surrounding them makes them feel like they were choking, unable to breathe, grasping for air, the fresh air that talks about freedom. At long last, Noel was able to smell that air again. Where he was no longer bound and kept. As soon as he got out, he never looked back and knew exactly where he was going. There was no looking back to the old life, the life that he was going to leave now. It took a while for him to get this freedom again, he will not make the same mistake and lose it again. He walks to the nearest bus station miles away from the prison. He had a nice long walk to the bus station. He was seeing in his vision the things that he missed to do, the people that he wanted to see since then. He was quickly distracted by the kind of memories that was flooding him, flashing before his very eyes like he had a portable TV with him to entertain himself on his little journey to get a ride. He passed by a street vendor that was selling off cigarettes. There was no way he could resist that one, so he stopped by and approached the vendor. He first checks his wallet to see if he had any cash left since the day he was arrested. He was certain he had at least a couple of bucks left there. There was a hint of glint in his eyes when he saw that there was indeed still money in his black wallet that he can use to buy himself a cigarette box. He pulled out the remaining cash that was left from the stuff he collected from his original things back at the prison. He asked the street vendor for a pack and the street vendor provided him his little cravings. Back in prison, he is able to get a single stick of cigarette depending on the kind of dealings he can get or give to fellow inmates and even to guards who are willing to compromise for the sake of benefits and taking advantage of the inmates who needed contact on the outside world. Noel scoffed at the memory. Outside of that prison, he can buy as much cigarette packs as he wants. No limitations and no difficult, almost impossible tasks just to get a single cigarette stick. Noel did not have a lighter to light up the cigarette stick, and fortunately, the street vendor has one. He asked to borrow it so he can light up his cigarette stick. Noel smoked near the street vendor's place and stayed near the sidewalk. He already lost track of time as to how long he had been waiting there and smoking his lungs out, creating a pile of butts on the sidewalk while he was waiting for something. No matter. He just liked the peace and the freedom. He can wait for as long as his pack of cigarettes can hold him off from boredom. Jaden gently carries the bouquet of fresh red roses that he bought earlier as he goes out of the car, the roll-up automatically sliding down, completely blocking off the noise coming from the honking and traffic outside of the building. Jaden then went his way to the elevator. Stepping inside the elevator, he clicked up to the penthouse. He pressed the button to close the elevator doors. He had the fresh red roses with him. Its lovely fragrance was filling up the elevator and he can smell it still. Jaden smirked at the satisfying scent of the red roses he got. He looked up at the LED indicator that indicates what floor he was in. The elevator dings and Jaden walks out of the elevator and opens the front door, going straight to the bedside table. He places the bouquet inside an empty transparent vase. He then opens the bedside table's drawer to pick up a notepad from the inside. He ripped a rectangular size paper from the notepad that he picked up and taking out his pen from the pocket that was inside his jacket and starts to write something on the paper. He was humming with a rather delightful mood that very moment. When he finished writing his message on the notepad, he took his jacket off and placed it on the side and then takes his shirt off. He walked over to the cabinet where his towel was hanging. He got all of his clothes off and wraps the towel around him as he entered the bathroom to wash up. Pam, a stunning tall woman in her early 20s, comes out from the kitchen wearing just panties and a long navy blue t-shirt. She was about to light up a blunt when she heard the door close from the bedroom. She halted her movements and wondered if Jaden had already gotten home. She was holding a cigarette stick that she lit up earlier. She left whatever task she was about to do and she went to the bedroom. Pam was rather surprised to see the bouquet of fresh red roses in the transparent vase. She smiled at the sight of them. They were perfect. Absolutely perfect. She walked closer so she can take a sniff out of its fragrance. They were amazing. She sees the note slipped below the vase that Jaden wrote earlier. She picked it up and saw what he had written: "Fresh roses grow for you as my love do." Pam got rather excited all of the sudden. She saw that Jaden had left his clothes scattered across the floor and that she can hear him singing inside the bathroom by now. With that, Pam grinned with delight and she put down the cigarette she was holding, placing it over the ashtray, and went towards the cabinet where she took a large towel hanging over there and placed it over the glass shower door where Jaden was taking a shower singing. Just when she was about to turn the shower handle door to join him inside, she heard her cell phone vibrated. Unlike Jaden, who was keen on ignoring his phone calls because they do not seem urgent enough, Pam at least had the urgency to answer when someone was calling. She lets go of the handle out of the bathroom and goes back to the bedroom where her phone was. She jumps in bed and took her phone that was edging out of her purse. She was resting her chest on the bed as she read the identity of the caller. She then looks over to the bathroom to check on Jaden. It would seem that he was still inside and singing, so she clicks her tongue and answers the call. Yes, he is here in the shower. Of course he didn't leave yet. I gave him 15 minutes. Yes, I will make sure he follows through, you can count on me, love. You always have. She answered at a low tone. She walks around the bed to her nightstand, clicked off her cell phone and bends over to open the nightstand bottom drawer. She pulls out a gun, watching her back, making sure Jaden is not out yet, puts it inside her purse that is sitting on her bed. Just after she placed the weapon on her purse, she heard Jaden coming out of the shower. She looks up to see Jaden walking over to the bed wearing a towel around his waist and a smaller towel on his shoulders, drying himself. There was a sound of relief coming out of her as she breathed. She was almost seen, but good thing Jaden was occupied enough not to notice her little movement. Is that for me or for you? Jaden suddenly asks. You know who this is for. It's time to get on the road, baby. I will meet you at the hotel, 3rd exit in CT, don't forget. She tried to answer normally. A bit unsure and nervous if he was suspicious or if he saw the gun. The thing about Jaden is that he does not have any kind of expression that would give him away with what he was thinking deep inside that thick skull of his. Pam needed to play it safe. Unlike this man in front of her, she could not exactly hate her facial expression the way he does. If she were nervous, she would sweat drop visibly, and there was no way for her to hide her shocked visage if she were caught in surprise, or hide her true expression with a fake smile. I won't, he replies with confidence. He was always sure of his answer and he always knows what he is doing and what he wants to do. Now how about you give me a little something before I go? He added, trying to look sexy in front of her. He was just in a towel, for goodness sake. His torso was bare in front of her, and he was just in the process of drying himself. There was no way she will be able to resist him when he is right there. Pam, however, had something already in her mind that she simply shook her head at him. No. Flower is not going to get you anything like that. Pam said playfully. She did not want to make it seem like she is ignoring him because she is not interested in him. She has game and she can play it with him. I'm going to see you a few hours from now. You got a lot of work to do. We are one step away from you being your own man. She continued to say, steering him to another direction, wanting him to focus on what needs to be done. Pam was a manipulative woman, being able to trick and play Jaden into her own hands. From $20 million. You know you should be the one running the family business by now. I want that diamond money. She tested to see if he would bite on her act. Her body is enough attraction to him, all she needed was a teasing and playful act, testing the waters if she could trick him and he will fall for it. Pam observed his expression closely, wanting to see if she had made any progress with the words she planted in his mind. She then walks over to the closet to grab a mink coat out of a box sitting on the closet floor hidden in the bunch of dresses hanging in the rod. She takes off her t-shirt and wears the mink coat quickly. Looking at the standing mirror, she pops her mink coat collar, looking so confident of herself. Jaden was caught off guard by her answer, stopped drying himself and looks directly at Pamphlet. Pam felt victorious with the kind of expression he had. Finally. It was as if for once, she is able to read him and not just see his nonchalant expression all the time. I let you sleep last night. Did you talk to Ike? Are we going this month? You know I can't wait forever. I need more of these. She continued to speak and Jaden gives her a warm gaze. I know baby, I hear you. But I got to be honest, it may take me at least a year or two to set all this plan up. It ain't at all that easy. He gives her an answer on his side. He believes and wants it to happen. But all that talk is not really easy to do. Planning is one thing and so is the execution of the plan. This is my life. I can't just leave my family like that. He pointed out in case Pam is forgetting that he will not just leave his family like that. Then he gestured at her beautiful physique. I mean, you can keep being just in your panties and that coat, but we can't go to Canada just yet. He said with a firm tone. He does not want to hook her around with promises, he is quite realistic with what he says. And he wants to be clear on that. If Pam could not see that, then it's time to show her. On the other hand, he reaches for her coat. You must be getting hot in that coat, let me help you with. He tried to woo her into him. He does not want them to fight over going to Canada and whatnot. Their life is not just about that, they are still them without Canada. But Pam did not take the news well the way he thought she would. Are you freaking kidding me? A year, she emphasized on how long she would have to wait. And it was quite unacceptable judging from her reaction. You better hope I'm still hot by then, and for your dissipating act in a year. You better ice me out soon or else somebody will. You can't be in your older brother's shadow forever. Interrupting, she outright rejects him and got furious for having to wait another year. Threatening him of what he might lose if he doesn't do anything about it. Pam got the message he is giving, but she also wants to give him a message of her own. She is not about to wait for a full year just to wait again or be utterly disappointed. There are stakes on the line that he might lose if he chooses to take things slow and careful. That stake is her. It's almost as if he is gambling her. Them. Jaden knew that, of course. Diamonds are not a problem, love. He tells her calmly. He was not going to raise his voice at her, not over something petty like this. He can be the better partner between him and her. Ha ha ha, you don't know that's my specialty. He said and teased. You're a pretty greedy woman, but I like it. He knew exactly how to court her. And he liked the challenge she was giving. She was a freaking gal to handle, but that was what he likes about her, and he believes that she is worth every minute of his attention. She smiled as he spoke. She liked his response. It was rather assuring and at the same time it was satisfying. Jaden saw the grin in her face. He knew by that time that she had already forgiven him and that she trusts him for his decisions. People are coming and going, waiting for buses in the Connecticut bus station. Noel is pacing in front of the bus station doorway. He kept looking at his watch, and as he chain smokes, creating more piles of butt litter in the sidewalk. Driving from New York to Connecticut, Jaden's black SUV is speeding through the highway signs. The impatient driver is back for yet another speeding road trip. He passes by the Freedom Tower. The cell phone on the phone holder hanging on the aircon started to vibrate, and Jaden glances on the screen to see who it was that was calling. As soon as he saw the name of the caller, he ignored it and continued to focus on driving. He scoffed and hit the pedal to speed up. He drives by the GWB bridge to Yankee Stadium. He was a great driver, fast and furious all the time. And what makes him the best is that he never gets caught or asked to pay any tickets. He starts to light his blunt and smoke as he changes the radio station dial. He inhales the smoke and allowed the ashes to fall outside of his window as he left the cigarette stick between his lower and upper lips now. One hand was on the wheel and the other hand was reaching for the radio dial, trying to find the perfect jam for his current night drive. When he finally found the right music he can jam with for the night, he grinned and inhales and exhales smoke from his cigarette as he continues to speed up along the highway traffic passing a I-95 North traffic sign. Chapter 3. The sun shines in a high building with 20 floors, the 19th floor owned by Leah and Marcus. In the bedroom window, Leah, a sexy slim black woman wearing a red tight dress just above her knee, is walking down the stairs. She walks across the apartment where at every corner is displayed how luxurious the place is. Advanced electronic furniture, wood floors, expensive artistic painting somewhat similar to Van Gogh, and obvious comfort wealth everywhere. She stops by the window in the lavish living room overlooking the beautiful city of New York. She adjusts the phone air plug that is already inserted in her right ear with her right hand, then takes one last pull of her almost extinguished blunt and douse it out in the window sill in front of her. Her mind still searching and thinking of things, she takes another freshly rolled blunt from a pack she reached from a table near the window and lights it up with a lighter. She takes a couple of pulls, then leaves the blunt between her lips. She picks up and loads a 9mm from the table just beside the pack of cigarettes and puts it down by the window sill. She picks up her cell phone from the table and presses the speed dial 1, displaying Little Brother in the screen. The call automatically connects to her phone air plug, so she puts down the phone by the window sill and waits for him to pick up. On the other side of the apartment, in the office, a cell phone sitting on the desk started to ring. Packaging plastic is visible all over the upscale home business office. Marcus, a black man, in a well-dressed suit just around in his 50s, sitting on an ergonomic chair at the corner of his desk, presses answer on the screen of his phone. The call transitioned to a hands-free mode. "Hey, what's up?" Jaden speaks as soon as he answered the call, hitting the brakes to stop at the red light. "Did you get him yet?" Marcus straightforwardly asks. "I'm almost there. Why are you even calling? You don't want him in the house. You don't even care about him. He is still Dad's son. We got to show some respect and love." A bit annoyed for even bothering to call about it. "No, I know yet. I always showed Dad's hoes some love. As for Noel, he might have done me wrong, but he is still my stepbrother for now. So, make sure he looks okay and that nobody raped him in that prison." Marcus answered, pretending he's slightly concerned. "Yeah right, like you really care." Jaden ignores Marcus' pretensions. "Just do your job and find out if he talked to anyone while he was locked down in his cell. 3 months is not long enough for an $8 million takedown. No matter how good my lawyers are." Marcus points the purpose of asking about him. "Whatever, I will let you know when I get close. I'm on 95 right now. Are you sure you don't want to see him? I can bring him home to you, you know." Jaden suggests. "No, don't he even dare, he can never come home again. After what he's done, he wasted too much money and life. Little bro, don't you get soft on me because he's your little stepbrother. You better call me when you got him." Marcus disconnects the call as soon as he gave his warning. Then starts to put plastic on the floor of his office. As soon as the call dropped, Jaden noticed the alert in the tire pressure light and decided to change lanes. When suddenly a police siren alarmed and appeared in the rearview mirror of his car. He had no choice but to pull over. The police car parked behind him and walked towards the driver's window. Before the policeman could even get there, he already put out his arm, waving his license and registration in his hand. "Not today," he cockily tells himself. The police officer wearing shades took a look at his face and then to check his license and registration. Your big brother says have a safe trip and don't let the sun go down on you too without you getting home, it is not safe. You have a nice day. Police Officer Connor says and then walks away right after to his police car. Dang, I need to take a piss and stop to get some gas and have this tire pressure light checked out. He's really getting on my nerves. I also need some antacid. Jaden says to himself as he gets back to the highway traffic. He made it to Connecticut and checks the time in his clock above the dash the moment he passed by the Welcome to Connecticut sign. It was 10:10 a.m. He stops in front of the bus station entrance and rolls down the passenger side window. Get in, little brother, talking to Noel, who was waiting outside the entrance surrounded by cigarette butts. Noel, a young black man in his mid-20s, exhales the last pull of smoke and throws the cigarette butt on the ground and steps on it. He walks over to the car and opens the passenger side door and gets in. He chuckled and gave Jaden a big hug across the armrest. Did you wait long? I told you I would come and get you, just running a little late. Jaden says as he hugs him back. Chapter 4. The black SUV then disappears from the bus station to the highway traffic. There was an awkward silence after their encounter after years. It was just DJ Khalid making all the noise from the radio as he shouts his name and introduce a new hip-hop song the millennials go crazy for. Noel is looking outside the window, getting comfortable in his seat and his arm on the armrest. He didn't have this view back in his prison cell, and it was nice to see them again, better than the ceiling or bars. He lowers the volume of DJ Khalid's new hit song to have a peace of mind. Jaden is not very fond of traffic and so keeps on changing lanes as soon as he sees the brake lights of the car in front turn red. First, we got to stop and fill this baby up with gas, check this tire and get you some new clothes. You look like you need it. How about you look into the glove compartment and grab some blunt? Jaden offered. Noel nods and smiles as he checks into the glove compartment for that box of blunt dashed inside. They stopped over at the Cumming gas station and fills in the tank. Then drives over to the air tire section and parks. Jaden went out of the car and bends over to check the rear tire for air pressure. While Noel stayed inside smoking a blunt, changing the radio station looking for some good music. While waiting for the air to fill up, Jaden's cell phone rings in his pocket. He answered and puts his over his ear. I know he's with you, tell him he is loved but he can never show his face here again. It was Marcus, sending off a warning. Screw you bro, you tell him yourself. I just changed my mind, we will both be home by tonight. Pissed, Jaden clicks off the end button on the screen. He tightens the cap on the rear tire and stands up, then gets into the driver's seat and shuts the door. They got moving. Noel, aware about the call, passes the blunt to Jaden to calm him down. Jaden takes a long pull of the blunt and blows it out his nostrils. I got you a surprise. We are going to meet my girl at the mall and she got a friend she brought along for you. We are going to shop and hit the hotel before we go home. Jaden offers. Nah man, I don't need new clothes. I don't got the time for that. I really want to go home, I got a lot of explaining to do. Noel rejects his kind offer. You got to relax man, you just got off jail and it's not a joke. I got to know if the big dudes got to you. What the heck happened? At least give yourself a break. Jaden trying to encourage him. I really don't know man. It's like I was set up or something. Things didn't go as planned. I'm still alive and got out. It was like when the deal was about to go down, there wasn't really a deal and they were there to kill me. I don't want to talk about it right now. I want to save the explanation to you, Marcus, and Leia at the same time. Noel, bothered by what happened in the past. Alright then, let's put it behind us for now, and this girl I'm setting you up with is going to help you with that. You also better give me a heads up because Marcus and Leia are you mad and disappointed at you. I'm just trying to help you little brother. Jaden said, hyping him up. I know. But I can talk for myself. Noel plainly said, still uninterested. Okay nigga, then just pass that blunt for me big man. Jaden teased. They drove out of the highway into the streets and then into the mall parking lot. They pulled up to the front entrance of the mall and stops in front of Pam standing and waiting alone with lots of bag with clothes. They opened the window and Pam peeked. "Hi baby, I couldn't wait. I know your size and guessed for your brother." Tammy didn't want to shop, you know how she is. Pam said in her sweet voice. "Okay baby, get in." Jaden understanding. "Hey Noel, glad to see you home. Your brother was really missing you." Pam greets. "Hey love." Noel simply replied. Pam then opens the rear passenger door and places the shopping bags inside first in the back seat foot area and then hops into the car and shuts the door. "The blue bag is yours and the yellow bag is your brother's. I got you guys some really nice things. 'Cause you know you are always wearing those street baggy clothes. So, I got you some elegant business clothes for both of you. Now let's go. I just drove in the hotel a while ago and I got the suites connected so we can party." Tammy explains. "I think you're going to like my friend Tammy, Noel. I told her this was a special occasion. I'm glad you're alive and you're home. So let's celebrate my baby's little brother." She turns to Noel. Jaden hits the gas pedal and gets out of the mall into the road and drives to the hotel. "Baby, the rooms are interconnected so you two can talk your business and smoke together later. But for the first 2 hours we are going to party separately. I got a little surprise for you and Tammy's got a little surprise for your brother." Pam then turns to Jaden. They stopped in the Hilton Hotel entrance. Pam immediately opens the door as soon as she saw Tammy at the entrance. Tammy, a sexy, young black woman, is waving to Pam with excitement as she walks up the rear passenger door. Jaden and Noel follows to open their doors and got out of the car to meet Tammy. Jaden hands over the car keys to the valet attentively waiting beside them. He comes over to hug Pam and Tammy hugs Noel likewise. "Hi. I'm Tammy and I'm going to give you the best welcome back party ever." Tammy whispers to Noel's ear. Noel looks at her and smiles and grabs her by the hand. The two couples walk inside the hotel entrance. Chapter 5. Inside the very luxurious Hilton Hotel in the lobby area, they smoothly walked in and showed their reservations to the clerk. After checking in, Tammy and Pam chat and laughs as they walk around the mini bar to the elevator where Jaden and Noel are waiting for the elevator to open. They got in and pressed the 14th floor. "You two, your room is the next door to ours. Here is card key." Pam explains and hands over the card to them. Pam opens the door to the adjacent suite for them and Noel and Tammy enters. Pam and Tammy locks eyes and Tammy giggles as she closes the door. "I can't do it baby." Jaden argues as he lies in the queen-sized bed. "It's okay baby, Mama knows that and she's going to take care of everything." Pam gets in the bed and massages Jaden's back. On the other room, in the queen-sized bed where Noel was lying, Tammy took the pillow from the bed and accidentally the pistol grip came out bulging from the pillow sheet. Immediately Noel was alerted and knew exactly what was going to happen next. The two fought hard who gets the pistol from the pillow. With Noel's brute strength and arms he threw Tammy on the floor and got the pistol, loads it and quickly shoots her, one bullet on the forehead, killing her instantly. She bled on the walls and the floor. The pistol had a silencer so he wasn't worried anyone hearing the shot. He calms down and pulled himself together, puts his clothes on, quietly making his way to the adjoined suite door. He stealthily opens the door without making any creaking sound. He crawled slowly holding the pistol on his right hand. He creeps into the bedroom and sees Jaden closing the curtains and Pam taking out a pistol she also planted inside the pillow sheet about to shoot Jaden on the back. Before she could even point the gun to him, Noel shoots at her first, headshot at the back of her head, giving an instant kill like he did Tammy. Her body slumping over on the bed. Jaden jumped and was shocked to see what he had just saw. Pam holding a gun in her right hand lying dead on the satin-sheeted queen-sized bed. "What the heck," were the only words that could come out of his mouth. Noel without regret or pity on his face walks toward the bed to check on Pam's body. Put your clothes on. Take my word for it, Pam was going to kill you, she had a gun on your head too. I ain't lying because Tammy was going to do the same thing. This was her gun, I had to do it first or else you'd be the one lying on this bed and not her. I want to go home now. Noel firmly said. Are you kidding me? We can't just yet. Jaden still shocked of what had happened. Why not? She's dead. These bodies for one. We can't leave them here. Jaden replied, getting a grip on himself. Okay, okay. I got a place we can clean up but it's way back in Harlem. Noel answers. I thought you had spot in Newark. Nah man, the water is no good there. I got a good spot in Harlem. Now what are we going about this bodies? Dang. You did all the killing, now you asking me. Wipe your prints off that gun and put the girls in the bed together to make it look like a lesbian murder-suicide. The rooms are not connected to me so it won't be a problem. Anyway, let's focus on, get dressed and get in the car. Noel nods in agreement and leaves the room to get Tammy's dead body. Jaden walks toward the bed and looks at Pam's body, her eyes still open. Why baby? Why? Jaden emotionally asks, not getting over the fact that she attempted to kill him. Jaden tears up and shakes his head. He takes a blanket to cover Pam's body and closes her eyes. He wipes his eyes and leaves to get the car. Jaden waits for Noel at the hotel entrance. As soon as Noel got in, he drives speedily out of that hotel, leaving all traces of memory he had with Pam. There was silence in the car for a time until they were miles away from the hotel. What the heck? Jaden releases his anger. I want to go home as soon as we clean up. Noel says. He opened the glove box compartment, grabs a freshly rolled blunt from a pack like Jaden first said when they met at the bus station, lights it up with a lighter he took from his pocket. They passed the I-95 South sign. Jaden was still cussing about everything while driving, so Noel hands him a lit blunt to get it all out. When suddenly, the tire warning light lights up again, coming on in his dash, so he looks to the side mirror to change car lanes, going over to the side for an easy pull over at the coming gas station. He parks it again to the air tire pressure area and gets out of the car. He bends over the rear tires to check for air pressure. Noel also gets out of the car, walks over to the service station store. I'm going to buy something and head to the bathroom, I'm going to take a piss. Noel tells Jaden and left. Jaden's cell phone rings from his pocket. He answers and puts it over his ear. How'd it go? Did you do it yet? You owe me this one. Marcus asks. No, I don't owe you anything. Something bad happened to Pam. We will be home soon. Stop calling and checking every hour, you're worse than a wife. We will talk when we get home, Jaden taking authority. He clicks off his phone, ending the call. Tightens once again the cap on the rear tire, stands up and gets into the driver's side door and closes the door. Noel, coming out from the restroom area, walks casually to the car and opens the door and gets in. Let's go, I'm 2 pounds lighter. We need to stop by in Harlem really quick and then go home. Noel suggests. He lights another blunt and Jaden starts steering the wheel, slowly kicking in the gas. He turns to Noel and takes his lit blunt from his mouth. Do you believe in God? Let's stop by at this church first before we go to Harlem. A church? A church? Heck no, after we drive through Harlem we go straight home. Pass me that blunt. Noel disagrees. Don't worry, little brother. I am going to get you home. Jaden assures. They stopped by the church as mentioned. Without getting off the car, Jaden whispers a prayer and then drives off. They passed a traffic and routed to the Bronx Expressway. They made it to the Harlem River Drive onto the 125th Street, passing the Apollo sign, and then to the Harlem Street, pulling over the parking in front of a Grand Harlem brownstone close to where they picked up Mel. Dang! Where did you get this spot? Jaden asks curiously. Let's head inside. What about the bags? Leave them, we won't need it, just grab your bag. I got clothes and money already stashed and ready here. I got a plan to make this right before we go home. My girl is tucked and your nephew is inside. I got a nephew? And you got a girl and money stashed. Whoa! That's impressive. You got yourself a package. Jaden surprised. She already got a son before I met her, but she said the father was said, so I have been raising him as my own ever since. I met her coincidentally, long story. Shorty is a real thorough hustler. You would like her or love her like I do. Noel briefs. Yeah man. Okay, let's get inside. I want to hear this plan of yours. In and out we can talk about it. Noel ends as he opens the door and gets out of the car. Jaden reaches behind the seat for the yellow shopping bag Pam had bought for him back at the mall and follows Noel out the car to the entrance. Chapter 6. It was a sunny afternoon, the sunlight directly hitting them in the eyes as Noel and Jaden walks up the stairs of the brownstone into the entrance. Jaden is holding the yellow shopping bag tightly under his arms. Noel preparing the keys as they dangle when he took it out of his pocket. He inserts the keys and unlocks the front door. Jaden, a 7-year-old boy, runs up to them as soon as they entered the house. He hugs Noel at his feet. He was only 3.8 feet. How is my baby boy? Noel greets his son. Daddy, I've missed you so much, Jaden giggles. Hello Uncle Jaden. The younger Jaden looks over and greets. Jaden nods and smiles in reply. Noel picks up young Jaden and hugs him tightly on his arms. He and Jaden walks into the living room. Jaden looks at the plush-looking surroundings. He was surprised to see a huge picture of himself with Noel on a frame pinned on the wall. Next to it is another framed picture with Noel hugging Jaden with a big smile on their faces. How does he know me? Jaden asks while looking at the pictures. He's never seen the kid and yet he knows him. Lots of pictures and great stories about my big brother in action. Noel proudly says. Jaden, still amazed, smiles proudly. He turned away from the pictures on the wall towards the living room. He sees Tiffany, a 27-year-old sexy black woman wearing a red sleeveless top and pants coming from the kitchen. She runs into Noel's arms. Noel, baby, what are you doing home? I thought you were still locked up with the feds. Tiffany asks, a bit surprised. I just got out, I'm home now baby. Let's talk in the bedroom, I'll tell you everything. Noel explains. This is my big brother, Jaden, he's the one I always talk about, the only one looking out for me. Noel introduces Tiffany to Jaden. Hi there. Tiffany acknowledges. Jaden simply nodded in response. Noel, what is going on? Tiffany turns to Noel a little worried. Why don't you get my brother a drink first and then meet me in the bedroom? While I'm going to take my son to his room. Noel suggests and then carries on the walk young Jaden to his room. All right, good night baby. She tells young Jaden. Tiffany walks to the kitchen to grab some beer to drink for the guest. While Jaden slowly sits down on the living room couch and rubs his head. She comes out of the kitchen carrying 3 bottles of beers clenched on her hands. She looks over to Noel's closed bedroom and then places the beers down the table, leaning into Jaden's ear. You going to kill your brother or not? She whispers. Jaden widened his eyes and looks at Tiffany in surprise. He takes the open beer bottle and takes a sip. If you are going soft, I will kill your brother by tomorrow if you don't. She continues to whisper. What the heck? Jaden coughs as he almost chokes on his beer because of what he heard. Nigga, he does not know anything about our past and he's not going to know about it at all. So don't you dare tell him I used to be your girl. I loved you but I'm not going to get killed over Noel, his bounty is $10 million. Are you kidding me? How could? Yes, that's your son right there and yes I knew he was your little brother from the start before I even bagged him. Now stop looking at me with your googly eyes and do what your big brother told you to do, cause I will do both of you if it's not done by tonight. Your big brother has got more money than you, you know. Interrupting Jaden. She leans up and wearing that killer smile, then walks quietly into the bedroom, closing the door behind her, smiling at Jaden. Jaden, alarmed, reaches for his gun in his back waistband but catches his reflex, knowing it was not the right thing to do just yet, so he sits back slowly further on the couch, shaking his head, and then takes a chug of his beer. His phone started to ring in his pocket. He takes it out and answers, putting it over his ear. Remember how I saved you from that monster? Talking about that old dude about to rape you when you were just 15. I shot him. I took it further, I chopped up the body and I took the body and all his belonging out the trap house. I had to go through all that and burn the body. Remember what I did for you, little brother. You owe me this one. It was Marcus. Jaden didn't bother to say anything more and ended the call, and just when he was about to put it back in his pocket, it rang a second time. He was about to reject the call when he saw it was Leia. Yes, Leia, what is it? Listen very carefully, I will only say it once. I left a car and money in New Jersey City, take him out there and let him go. I found out what you and your brother are planning to do. I do not know what you owe him, but let Noel go or I will kill both of you. I will text you the location of the truck. Leia explains over the phone. Before he could even say anything, he hangs up the phone when he saw Noel coming out of the bedroom. I hope Tiffany treated you well. Here, I left a change of clothes in the guest bathroom. Go ahead and take a shower, get yourself cleaned up. Noel offers as he hands him a white towel. I'm good, man, I got new clothes here. Talking about the yellow shopping bag he brought with him. No worries. But do you really want clothes from Pam? You got to focus, bro. They are clothes I took from your closet. I got a plan to make all this right. The guest bathroom is right down the hall. All right. Jaden smiles and walks to the bathroom. Chapter 7. Cars are passing by the Harlem street. Jaden and Noel walks out of the brownstone door. Noel hands over a black backpack to Jaden. Jaden walks over to the car, opens the trunk and places the backpack there. He gets in the car and starts the engine. Noel stopped at the door, looks back to hug little Jaden and then comes to the car. Little Jaden waving goodbye to him as they drove away. We got to go get some money. Jaden brings up. I took $500K from the house. If we can at least get another $500K more, it should make Big Bro less mad. I know he called you last night and he must be really mad he wouldn't even talk to me. Wait a minute, you just lost $6 million. We got to get $6 million if you really want to make this right with him before you can walk in the door. That's been the delay why I'm not getting you home. We need a plan. I got a plan. But we got to drive through the Bronx first. It's Tuesday, they're moving that illegal digital NFL betting money in an apartment and I know the runner altogether. That should sum up to $1 million. It's a start. Jaden offers. Noel sparks a blunt and inhales deep, then nods his head yes. They drove through the Yankee Stadium, the Bronx train station and court buildings. They stopped at a German digital gambling office. Jaden and Noel wore masks that only reveals their eyes. They went inside with their guns drawn. This is a stick-up. Now give me the bets. Jaden points gun to Igor, the one responsible to hold the bets. You gonna walk up to me like that and just take my receipts, huh, Jaden? Even with your mask I can tell it's you. Your brother is not even worth it. A shot was fired and Igor's body slumped down in his chair. Wait, what did he just say? Worth what? Noel confused. Hurry, take the money and let's go, don't worry about him. Jaden completely ignores the arising question. They ran out of the office entrance into their getaway vehicle. Jaden's car immediately drifts off into the highway before the police would arrive. They continued on to the French digital gambling office. Walking in like the first time with their guns drawn and masks on. This is a stick-up. Now give me the bets. Jaden points the gun at him. You going to take my receipts like that, Jaden? Your brother ain't even worth it and you know it. Blair blurts out. Before he could say another word, bullets passed through his body several times with a silencer. Go get the money and let's go, don't worry about him. Jaden repeats. They hurried out the office and drove the car to the next destination. They stopped at Black Digital Gambling Office. Like the first 2 times, they head out with their guns drawn and masks on. This is a stick-up. Now give me the bets. Stop this nonsense, Jaden. You're only wasting your time, you know it's not even worth it. Your brother is not worth it. Screw you. Eric shouts, even with a gun pointed at him. 3 shots were fired, 2 on his body and the last on his forehead. Get the money and let's go, don't worry about him or what they say. Jaden then walks out the front door entrance for surveillance as Noel grabs the black suitcase full of money from behind the desk where Eric's dead body is slouched over. They took off quickly and crossed the George Washington Bridge, parking it at an overlooking just by the bridge. This is not going to be enough. Jaden counts. It has to be, I want to go home no matter what, no matter how mad Marcus and Leia are. I want to make this right and I'm going to set it right. Noel demands. Jaden shakes his head in worry and starts the car and drives out the parking lot. They passed New Jersey Turnpike entrance sign. They had been in the car for a time of silence. Jaden rubbing his temples. Noel trying to sort things out in his head as he looks out the window. I got a plan. But we gotta run by the carport. Jaden offers, breaking the silence. What you planning? We gonna steal a shipment of cars like the good old days? No thanks, I'm past that. I want to go home. Noel rejects. No, trust me little brother, I can do this. Let me make this call. Jaden encourages. Noel had no other ideas in mind, so he nodded fine to agree. They pulled over at Newark Airport. Jaden grabs his cell phone and dials a number, then puts it on his ear once it started ringing. I know I told you to hold it off, but I'm letting you know I'm making a move tonight. Jaden speaks. All right, head over. I will start. The person from the phone replies. Chapter 8. The sun was setting and they were running out of time. They drove off the airport into a warehouse office. Ike Diamond, a 60-year-old white-haired man, is sitting at an upscale business office smoking a cigar, speaking with someone on his phone. You sure you can get all the keys tonight? All right, then I will have the $20 million waiting for you. I will text the address and will be waiting in the trucking lot office building. Remember that there is only one guard and he has to open up all cases, so it might take around 30 minutes. No matter what he says to you, be cool. He won't expect a black man, but he follows his orders. Ike specifically instructs. I got it. No problem. Jaden from over the phone says. We are both going to have to lay low after this for at least 3 years. Don't call me and just take your money and keep it in a mattress. I will be waiting for you. Forwarding the text now. Sent text. Jaden ends the call and places the cell phone on his lap and then turns to Noel to disseminate the information. I have been putting this diamond heist together for a very long time and I think it might be time to get this money. This is the plan. I'm waiting for an address at the airport. I pull up there and keep the engine running while you get inside and give him a code I will give you. You have to wait for it and he will bring you 10 car keys coming from suitcases inside a safe. You give him the code one at a time. He'll give you 10 cases with 100 car keys that all have diamonds Indiana them. You thank him for his time and give him 50 grand in an envelope I'll give you. You got it? No shooting. Just waiting. Jaden says. I got it. Give money, come out. No shooting. Noel summarizes. Jaden's phone vibrated. He looks at it and then at Noel with a smile of excitement on his face. I got the address. Let's get this show on the road. A plane just took off the Newark airport. They passed by an UPS airport delivery building, they slowed down and makes a U-turn. They pulled over close to the entrance of the office and stops. Noel quickly hops out and walks inside the building. He walks up at the desk wearing a smile on his face. "What you smiling at, you nigga? What is your code?" the security guard asked. "What? You heard me, nigga," I said, "what is your code?" The security guard repeats. 7854328967. Noel recites. "You sure, nigga?" "What? I asked you a question, nigga," I said. "Are you sure with that number?" "Yes." "Good. Then I will be right back with your items." "Thank you." "Don't thank me just yet. I do my job and you do yours. You got my envelope right there." "Yeah, sure, right after I get my item." The guard took off and walks away from the counter desk into the next room. He opens a safe, takes a black small case, closes it and walks back. He pauses at the door and adjusts the gun tucked in his back waistband. Noel is observing and impatiently looking at his watch. He put the small black case on the table and opens it in front of Noel. There were 10 car keys inside. "I don't like it when they send niggas like you here," the security guard teases. "I'm done with all your niggers and I ain't taking any more of it." Noel slams the case close and tucks it in his armpit and puts his gun back to his back waistband. "Whatever, nigger," the security guard mumbled as he turned back. An alarm goes off and loud bells and flashing lights occurred. Noel shot the security guard in the back. He panicked, slapping the counter and ran. Chapter 9. Alarms and sirens were blaring all over the place. Noel is running like a madman out of the office into the car. He opens the door and throws the case in. "Whoa, that was quick, you got all 100. "No man, just 10, just 10. I had to pop the guy." "So drive." "What? Are you freaking kidding me? Let's get out of here." Jaden shouts as he stepped hard on the gas pedal. He was coming at me over and over again. "I don't play that game no more. Not for anybody, not for money." Noel blurts. They got far enough and pulled over. "Shut your big mouth. I specifically told you no matter what." Dang. Jaden's phone rings. He looks at it and then at Noel and presses answer. "Yes, I'm on the way, only 10. "Yes, only 10. Jaden sighs. "This is bad. You're only getting 2 million and that's it." "2? Just 2. Jaden mutters. "You should have done it and I should have listened to your brother. Now come and get your money. Bring me the keys you have and lose your car. I don't even want to know what happened. For sure, we can never do business again. Be here in 20 minutes. Ike ends the call. Jaden rages over it and slams his palms on the steering wheel. Noel shakes his head in disappointment. "Dang it. We could only do this once," Jaden shouted. They drove and halted into a truck lot behind a gas station. Jaden grabs the small black case from Noel's, getting out of the car and shutting the door hard. He walks into a small office building in the corner of the truck parking lot. He looks around and walks into the office entrance. Noel back at the car is sweating, sitting nervously as he watches Jaden disappears from his sight as he enter inside the office. Ike Diamond is sitting behind the desk facing the backwards. Upon hearing footsteps nearing, he stands up with a small blue gym bag. He turns to see Jaden. They exchanged the case to the bag. "No more contact or deals. This is the last one. I hope your brother and this 2 million is worth the 20 million you spent all your life planning for. You screwed up. Now get your shoes off my property." Jaden walks out of the office door shaking his head. He went back to the car, opening the driver's side door and slamming it shut. "You got the money?" Noel asks. "It's not enough. We got to do something." Jaden replies, shaking his head. He throws the small blue gym bag at the back next to the shopping bags in the back seat. Then proceeds on to driving. Back at Leia's living room, She is standing by the window and takes a freshly rolled blunt out from a pack. She lights it up and takes a couple of pulls. She keeps it in her mouth and loads a 9mm gun and places it at the window sill. She picks up her cell phone and dials a number, then puts it over her ear. Is everything in place? She asks over the phone. And the money? She continues. Okay, good. Your fee will be doubled. If I ever need your services, I will call you again. Good night. She ends the call and takes another round of pulls before she flicked it out the window and went away. Jaden drives on a highway to New Jersey. Let's go home. We got enough for Big Bro not to get mad. What are you upset about? Noel notices Jaden's expression since the heist was the same. You can't go home just yet. 1. We have to get rid of the car, and 2. You got to lay low. I will explain everything to Big Brother. Jaden replies without looking at Noel. No man. I ain't doing that. You are. You have to. I want to go home. Now. You don't run this family. I'm next in line. I want to go home. Drive me home now. Noel raises his voice. Jaden looked at Noel in the eyes. He quickly changes lanes to the side and pulled over at the rest area near a gas station. He parks the car and opens the door. Get out of the car. I'm tired of this nonsense. Say no more. Noel gets out of the car as well, and they fought with their fists. They beat each other up so bad. They were black and blue, their teeth and nose bleeding dripping in the floor. Jaden punches one last blow at Noel's left cheek that dropped him on the ground. Trust me, little bro. I love you, my baby brother. Now get your stubborn self in the car and let me get you into safety. After all, I am still your big brother. Jaden exclaims and turned his back on Noel. He turns back around to see Noel drawing a gun coming from his back waistband, pointing it at his brother, and puts his finger on the trigger as he wipes the blood from the corner of his lips. He reflexes quickly and pulls out his gun holstered in his belt and points it at Noel as well. Chapter 10. Brothers were pointing guns at each other, people looking at them from around the rest area. Suddenly, Jaden reaches into his breast jacket pocket with his free hand, pulling out slowly a booklet of what turns out to be a passport. He flips the handle of the gun toward Noel. Here is a new passport, money for a year, a gun, and a ticket to leave now. I could have killed you, but I'm not going to. I'm your big brother. I love you like mom. I am not going to take over this so-called family business for this price. Trust me. Take my gun, get in the car, and let's go. I got a car stashed for you in Miami. Jaden said and turns his back to him and walks to the car, getting in the driver's side door. Noel calmed down and put his gun back as he gets up and follows Jaden into the car and gets in. They drove out of the rest stop back into the road. There was utter silence inside the car. Jaden looking straight ahead and Noel doing the same. Setting aside what had just happened, Leia paces out of the living room into Marcus' home office, looking at all the plastic wrappings in the wall. Marcus is sitting there behind his desk with a loaded gun in his lap. Who were you talking to on the phone, sis? Marcus asks. It's none of your business. Leia retorts. I heard the boys got into more trouble on the way home. Looking at Leia walking in the office. You're the big brother. Seems like you're in trouble too. We don't have the same mom anyways. This makes all of us. Speeding in the highway, then all of a sudden stops at a building and pulls over. Jaden hugs Noel hard in tears. Leia from up the building looks down from the lavish bedroom window, smoking a blunt. Get into that truck, take all this money and bounce. Pointing at the parked black car next to them. Noel carries with him the bag of money and gets out of the car and rides into the black car. They both looked at each other from the window as they part ways. As Noel adjusts the seat, he finds a blinking cell phone. He takes it and opens it. He sees a message in the inbox and reads it. Jaden is going to try to kill you. I do not trust him even though you got this far. If he tries anything, kill him first before he kills you. Your big sis loves you. After reading the message, he then looks up at Jaden again from across the window, unsure of the truth. Leia then walks away from the window. Jaden notices the low-pressure tire light intensely blinking this time. His rear tire is downright flat. Looking at the back seat, he saw Noel's new clothes shopping bag sitting there. He takes it and opens his door and comes out. He checks the rear tire flat and shakes his head. Noel sees Jaden coming out of the car and walking towards his car's passenger seat and gets in. You left your new clothes, brother. Jaden smiles. His phone rings, he answers it and puts it in his ears. Kill him now, Marcus says over the phone. Jaden and Noel locked eyes with each other and draws their guns. Jaden dropped his phone and they fought and struggled inside the car. Until both guns go off at the same time. Hello? Hello? Alright, I changed my mind. Can you hear me? I said I changed my mind. Marcus pleads as his voice fades inside the car of Jaden and Noel's dead body slumped over each other. The cell phone was dropped in the passenger seat floor. I changed my mind. I love my brother. 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 Mind. I love my brother.